That's all right. Nice cool spot.
Yeah.
That's all right. That's
That's all right. Everyone can step out.
step in.
That's all right. Okay, good afternoon, Queensland. Well, we're here at Thursday Island and we've just opened a brand new $5.2 million community centre. This is the first community centre in the Torres Strait, and through the strong advocacy of Cynthia Louis, this will be a community hub for families to come, to talk about issues, to get a range of support services, and also to help with issues such as domestic and family violence, as well as helping our seniors and people with a disability. I want to thank Patricia and the team here for their lovely warm welcome, and we're always excited to be here, but also it's about delivering to the community, and this is what the community had said to us a few years ago they wanted, and we have delivered that. Last night we had the opportunity to meet with some tradies, and they said that they were getting a lot of work up here in the Torres Strait, and that's because our government is investing millions of dollars into the most furthest community of Queensland. When I said that I'd be a government for all of Queensland, I meant that, and I'm taking this cabinet out to many places across Queensland where we get to hear and listen to people firsthand, hear their ideas, hear what they would like for their community and how they would like the government to help them. Today we had a really good discussion at our Cabinet meeting. All ministers were engaged. They had community deputations. Yesterday they'd been out and about visiting different islands and speaking with different communities right across the Torres Strait and the Northern Peninsula area. And the needs here are probably very complex, but ones that we need to address. When we talk about the cost of living and understanding those cost of living pressures are being felt in our regional cities and in the southeast, I think we need to stop and really think that here in the Torres Strait and the Northern Peninsula areas, the cost of living pressures are probably 3 times that of what we're seeing in the southeast of our state. And something has to be done about that. Straight away, Minister Bailey is doing a review of the freight charges that are in our Indigenous communities and up here in the Torres Strait, and he'll be reporting back to myself and to the Treasurer and back to Cabinet. Other areas and issues that were raised include issues of housing, of school transportation, skills and training, and I'll come back to that in a moment. So we really want to sit down and address these issues with the community. The mayors have put to us an idea about having a summit where we can get some key ministers working with Cynthia Louie, who is really the government champion up here, to really help resolve some of these issues and work together collaboratively. So Cabinet has decided that within 3 months we will convene a summit back here on Thursday Island with key ministers and with the councils to work through these ideas even further. And by then we should have a report as well on the freight issues. So as you know, it's a very complex set of issues up here and one that it was absolutely imperative that my Cabinet came here to hear firsthand. Secondly, I might just add this too. We understand that building on from the Jobs and Skills Summit, we really do need to see more of a linkage between employment and the skills and training that is needed and what the employer needs are. Minister Farmer brought to Cabinet up here on Thursday Island a First Nations training package, $8.3 million to help identify the needs of business, really empowering our Indigenous and First Nations businesses across our state. So Minister Farmer will be releasing that strategy and she'll be working with the local councils to see how we can better integrate skills and training with employer needs. This is really about empowering our First Nations people and something that I'm absolutely committed to. Happy to take some questions, and then Minister Farmer and Cynthia and the Treasurer are happy to comment.
When you say a summit,
yes,
do you mean with the federal government as well?
This will be just our state ministers in the first instance. Separately, where there are issues that cross over into the federal arena, I will deal with we will deal with our counterparts, but of course I will speak with the Prime Minister as well.
Do you think there is a possibility that you could speak to the federal government and get all of the relevant ministers up at the same time?
Look, if we can, I'm quite sure they have an open mind, and if there could be a federal representative, even if it was a senator, I think we would welcome that.
You mentioned Minister Bailey reviewing the freight charges.
Yes.
Here on Thursday. C-Swift is the one and only freight company. It's wholly owned by the Queensland Investment Corporation.
Yes.
What ability does the state government have to kind of intervene in that area?
Well, what Minister Bailey has spoken to Cabinet about is that some of our freight subsidies go out into the western parts of our state, but not necessarily into some of the remote parts of our state. That review will be comprehensive, and I want an equal playing field. I want to make sure that there is no disadvantage when it comes to people living in some of the most remote parts of our state.
And what else, when will the terms of reference of this review be put out or anything?
Yes, well, we just discussed it today at Cabinet, so I'm hoping that Minister Bailey will work with the Treasurer and come back to me in time for the summit in 3 months. But I want this work to happen quickly. It is a very, very big issue. We really need to address the high cost of basic essentials, fresh fruit and vegetables, milk, bread, cheese, eggs. These are astronomically high. Anybody in southeast Queensland would be absolutely alarmed to know the tangible difference that is being paid here. Speaking with Cheryl last night, who comes up here and works on Thursday Island, she told me the enormous cost it is to work here on the island and to live on the island when you have to pay these extraordinary prices. And of course then that has an impact on healthy living, healthy eating. These are very fundamental issues that we have been talking about today.
How will that summit be different, I guess, from meetings that you've had here this week? Why can't that work be done right now?
I think because there's like collaboration that can happen across the ministers. For example, even last night, I could hear Minister Grace and Minister Farmer talking, how can we better integrate education and skills and training? But to do that, as the locals have said, you've got to see it, you've got to feel it, you've got to witness it on the ground. You've got to be part of it to understand the issues. Simple issues that may seem easily fixed have not been fixed, like school transportation. Why is there not a school bus service that can collect children and take them to school? Simple issues, but need a fix. So we'll be looking at those issues that the communities have raised, and like I said, we'll be reporting back to Cabinet and having this summit specifically focused on this area, which I feel is an area of disadvantage when you're coming to deal with issues such as the basic costs of food and vegetables. And don't forget, if it's expensive here on Thursday Island, the more remote communities, the islands, it is absolutely astronomically high in those communities as well.
Did the Treasurer want to...
Yep.
Before it does,
Yes.
sorry to take it back to Brisbane, but
That's all right.
the Lord Mayor is calling for state government dam operators to proactively release water from SEQ dams before the wet season. Is this something you're considering?
I think Minister Butcher has addressed that. We are keeping a really close eye on that. We've had the briefing from the Bureau. I can assure Queenslanders that we are monitoring all of that. The best thing the local councils can do is implement their recommendations and get those stormwater drains fixed up, get their monitoring right, because as we saw, when we have a large amount of water, it actually does fill into those creeks and systems near the streets as well. So I think they need to focus on fixing that up, and we'll focus on dealing with the Bureau.
And when will the report into February's floods be released?
Yeah, look, I understand it's coming soon. I'll get an update from Minister Ryan. He did mention to me the other day that it's close to being finalised.
Is there anything you know that you're already implementing from that report?
Look, I'd have to talk to Minister Ryan about that report, but it's not far off. Okay, thank you.
So I might just say a few things about the announcement today. Great to be at this new community centre. In our budget in June this year, we increased funding to community centres, the 127 community centres that the Queensland Government supports across the length and breadth of Queensland, almost $52 million. Not only will that help this community, it'll help communities across Queensland, but this is the most northern of all of the community centres we support as a government, and that funding has effectively doubled, almost doubled the operational funding for these community centres. So the great work they do in the community, not only supported by a brand new building here, but supported by ongoing funding. And that's what we are very proud to support as a government, strengthening communities across Queensland, wherever Queenslanders live, whether it be in the far north of our state here, right at the top of our state, all the way through to our regional and remote communities and all the way to our cities as well. I also wanted to say something today about land tax and the comments made by the LNP. Our government makes no apologies for levelling the playing field in Queensland, in particular to allow families to get into the property market in our state. It's just not fair that interstate property speculators can buy properties in different states, avoiding the land tax threshold, where people who invest in our state, pay more land tax. We don't think that's fair. It's why I announced almost 10 months ago a closure of this loophole, a well-advertised and a well-supported tax minimisation program across the country. We want a fair tax system in this state, and that's what I have committed to doing as Treasurer. When it comes to the LNP, we know the LNP is in the pocket of the property developers. The LNP is in the pocket of property developers. That's always been the case and always will be the case. The LNP supported this measure in the Parliament. Anything they say today is based on one thing and one thing alone, and that's politics. And this just underlines the fact that you cannot trust a single thing David Crisafulli does. He supported this in the Parliament, and now his public comments are about opposing it. So this is a man that cannot be trusted, and he's demonstrated it yet again.
Treasurer, how, do you expect state and territory governments to share information on individuals' property land holdings, and have you consulted with them on this?
Yes, we've consulted with the property industry about this before we introduced the legislative measures into the Parliament. And we've also talked to other states about it. I've raised it with all of my state and territory counterparts, and we work across the country now. We work across the country with the Australian Taxation Office. All of the heads of the state revenue offices work together collaboratively on tax measures now. So we don't anticipate any problems working with other states on this, unless they want to support a tax minimisation. And I don't believe any Treasurer wants to support tax minimisation. We need a fair tax system in our state, we need a fair tax system in our country, and I think Queenslanders overwhelmingly want that, and that's what I've pledged to deliver for the people of our state.
And when will you be releasing your modelling for those incoming tax, the impacts of those?
We've made it very clear. I made a decision, and our government supported that decision in December last year. We announced we were doing this. We were doing it to close a loophole in the tax system. You don't need to model closures in loopholes. Governments need to act. We need to act to make the tax system fair. Really, the LNP lecturing to anyone on fairness is frankly embarrassing. But of course, these are people that cannot be trusted. They did one thing in the Parliament, they supported this tax reform, and now they oppose it, which again undermines any credibility that David Crisafulli has as the LNP leader.
And your response to that description as a renter's tax?
Not at all. I mean, look, when interest rates were at record lows, did anyone see rents go down in Queensland? Of course they didn't. That's just an absolute furphy. There's no substance to that at all. Rents are based on supply and demand. That's how the market works. That's how rents are determined. And we've seen record increases in property investment in Queensland over the last 2 years as well, record increases in property prices. So we don't anticipate this will have an impact on rents. We don't anticipate it will have an impact on property prices. But what we do anticipate it will have an impact is on making our tax system fairer. And that's what I'll always pledge to do as a Labor Treasurer.
The land tax is a state-based tax, and you're speaking of a loophole that applies, I would assume, nationally. Why is Queensland then the only one benefiting from this closing of a loophole? Is that fair? Is that constitutional? Like, is that legally sound?
Of course it is. We're very confident in our position.
And you had advice on that?
And absolutely. And Queenslanders know that our government a Labor government will always do the right thing to make the tax system fair. And that's what we've done. Okay, thank you.
I'm very excited to announce that Cabinet approved today an $8.3 million First Nations training strategy. This strategy is aimed at 3 different groups. To First Nations people themselves, who have the right to have the training that is going to lead to a good job. It's to support businesses, and we know that businesses all over Queensland and all over Australia are suffering from critical labour shortages, and it's to support communities just like Torres Strait Islander communities who have needs. They need trained staff for health, they need trained workers for their small businesses, they need people who can work in government, they need their community supported by enough skilled labour. So this strategy goes on the back of the National Jobs and Skills Summit, which identified that there are many people who currently face barriers to workforce participation, and we all know that First Nations people are one of those groups. In Queensland, we projected that we'll have an extra 280,000 jobs in Queensland, And we know there are 170,000 people in Queensland who currently face barriers to the workforce, and we know that if we bring them to the workforce, then we're going to go a significant way to addressing labour shortages. First Nations people currently take part in a number of our skills and trainings programs. We need to make sure that that's training that actually leads to jobs. So this week in the Torres Strait, many of the mayors and community and business leaders have been saying to us that they need a summit to look at where their community is going to go in the future, what jobs are in demand now or in the future, making sure that we're working with industry, with all levels of government to see what training is going to be required. How do we work with students way back at school level to make sure they're making good choices so that they can get jobs and stay in their own communities. So that summit, as the Premier said, will be held in 3 months' time, and we'll be working closely with this community to say, what do you need in terms of skilled labour? What do your people need in terms of training? And we're very much looking forward to working with the whole community on that.
Good. Thank you. And two very important things I feel happened here today. So we saw the opening of the community hub here at Thursday Island. 5.2 million was invested into this vital service that is going to provide support to vulnerable families living in the region. It is going to address all the social and emotional well-being that families face every day. So I'm very excited about the opening of the community hub. It's also very, it's wonderful to have the Premier, the Treasurer and the whole Queensland Cabinet up here to be with us while we talk about all the different I guess investments coming into the region, but also while we look forward into the future. I'm also very excited about the First Nations training strategy that Minister Farmer just announced. We're not only just looking at the social and emotional well-being of people living in the region, we're also planning for the future, and it is about creating opportunities that will empower and strengthen people living in the region to open up those windows of opportunities for jobs for the future. And I'm very excited to represent this government and the Cook electorate moving forward.